الصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, my dear brothers and sisters. I hope you're all well. I'd like you all to do me a favor. I'd like you all just to look to the right for me. Okay? Now look to the left for me. Now I'd like to ask you all a question. When you were able to look to the right, could you see what was happening on your left-hand side? Of course, the answer is no. When you were looking to the left, could you see what was happening on the right-hand side? Of course, the answer is no. In Arabic, what do we call this? In Arabic, we call this ghafla. Ghafla means if I can convince you to look one way, then I can do whatever I want in the other direction. So the linguists, they say that ghafla is defined as يشتغل به قلبه ويستولي عليه حتى تسير فيه غفلة. That this is when the heart becomes occupied and it becomes overwhelmed with something until it becomes heedless, unaware, inattentive. It doesn't know what's happening to one side because it's so occupied with something that's happening on another side. And what do you call the someone who ghafla is applied to? هو الذي لا يعرف ما عنده. He doesn't know that which is with him. He's completely unaware of what's happening to him. ولم يجرب الأمور. And he's not able to test and examine matters because he's occupied. He's busy. He's been made to look in a particular direction so that he doesn't know what's going on in the other direction. There's a word in Arabic. The one who ghafla is applied to, you call them the mughaffil or mughaffal. Mughaffal means man la fitnatun lahu, that someone who doesn't have any acumen, any sense, any intelligence, i.e., they are easily duped, they're tricked, they can have the hood pulled over their eyes, they can be taken advantage of. Like, do you know these kinds of people where you get the email and it's the prince from another country saying, "Oh, I have £1 million to give to you, but you first need to send me £100 as a transaction release fee." 9 out of 10 people will realize this is a trick, but there are some people who are easily fooled, easily tricked, easily duped because they are heedless and they are unaware of the realities of the situation. Al-ghafla adamu iktimali aqlul insan is when someone doesn't have the full sense with them. وَعَدَمُ التَّبَصُّرِهِ بِالْعَوَاقِبِ, and they're not able to see the consequences of a particular action. They go down a particular pathway, or they involve themselves in something, or they remove themselves from a situation without fully understanding what is going to happen in a few years or days or months' time. Let me give you a few very, very clear examples. Remember, ghafla means if I can occupy you one way, I can do whatever I want in the other direction. If someone was to kill or murder one person in front of you, this would be an outrage. It would be a catastrophe, a calamity. But if someone was to murder 100 people, this would be, a hugely terrible thing. You would never stand for it. But let me give you 2 or 3 clear examples. If I can convince 123 million people to watch the Super Bowl, I can do a bombing campaign in Gaza and murder 100 people at the same time. This is ghafla. In 2008, if I can launch Operation Cast Lead, which resulted in the murder of 1,400 Gazans, how would this happen? Because it was done at the same time as election year. Every single person was busy analyzing politics. Who's going to win? Is it going to be the Democrats? Is it going to be the Republicans? Are we going to vote for this? Are we going to vote for that? What's their policy like? What's their policy like? You can convince the whole population to focus on one particular thing. You can launch an operation and murder 1,400 people at the same time. In 2012, in another operation called Pillar of Defense, again during election year, this was the second term of Obama. What happened? Everybody was busy with the presidency. A series of bombing campaigns happened, and again, another 100 innocent lives were lost, and over 1,000 Palestinians would face another massacre. Again, and this is the final example I'm going to give you, in something called Operation Protective Edge, where over 2,000 Palestinians were killed. I wonder what was happening at the same time. Do you all remember what was happening around the summer of July 2014? The World Cup final. This is ghafla. If everybody can be convinced and duped and tricked to look in a particular direction, you can do whatever you want in a different direction. This is no coincidence. This is clever planning. This is clever plotting. The poet says, في غفلة العمر لا حزن ولا ألم ولا ابتهاج بإنجاز ولا ندم نمضي كأن خيوط الوقت عابثة تعلو بنا الريح حينا ثم نرتتم. That in the ghafla of life, there's no sadness and no pain. There's no rejoicing over any accomplishment nor regret. People that are in a state of heedlessness, just living life, enjoying and being distracted, they don't notice anything. There's no sadness, there's no joy, there's no happiness, there's no pain. And they progress as if the strings of time are playing them, and being frivolous with them, pulling them into whatever direction they want to be pulled. And the winds raise them up sometimes, and then they become crashing down. This is what it's like to live in ghafla, just completely unaware of what is going on. But you might think, how are people in ghafla? We have so many intelligent people, so many experts, so many, geniuses amongst us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يعلمون ظاهرا من الحياة الدنيا وهم عن الآخرة هم غافلون. Imam Razi says about this verse, Surah Rum, verse 7, that people's knowledge is only about the matters of this world, but they don't know the reality of the next world. They're not balancing it with the knowledge of the hereafter. They may be very intelligent when it comes to finance or economics or medicine or politics or so many things, but if they don't link that with the consequences of what is going to come after this world, then this is called ghafla, ghafilun. They are ghafilun. Hum anil akhirati hum ghafilun. Hum is repeated twice. They are in ghafla. They are heedless. They don't know what is going to happen to them after they die. They don't understand the consequences of the actions that they are doing. And another famous example, if you're on the motorway and how loud it is and how fast the cars are going, it's a scary place to be if you ever break down. But do you know who isn't aware of what's going on? The cows in the field. They completely have no clue. They don't care about the sound, about how dangerous these things are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes these people who are in ghafla. Ulaika kal an'am. Those people are like cows. But then He goes even further. Bal hum adal. They are even worse than cows. They're even more misguided. Ulaika humul ghafilun. That they are heedless. Why? Because cows are creations that haven't been given the same cognitive ability that humans have. We've been given cognitive ability, but we still are heedless. We still are duped and convinced to read unnecessary things and watch unnecessary things and do unnecessary things and not focus on the major issues which are around us. If the people weren't ghafil, maybe we could solve a lot of the problem, but those who have the power and capacity to solve, then they are occupied with things which are of no benefit to them. There are over around 300,000 pedestrians killed every year globally. One of the major reasons as to why people are killed is what? What do you think? A mobile phone. 1 in 7 pedestrians are killed. Why? Because they're on the mobile phone, not paying attention to what's around them. Because what they see on their phone is more important to them than what is actually going around them. And the problem is, this is why they put themselves in harm's way and they get killed. The scholars say that all of sin is rooted in ghafla, because if people actually knew the consequence of their action, then they would never do a sin. And the reason why ghafla actually happens is because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's generosity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so generous with us, that is when we take advantage of that generosity and we become heedless of the actual affairs which are important. It's considered a disease. It's a disease and an illness of the heart and the mind. And this is one of Shaitan's main weapons, because if he can't convince you to leave the salah, he can convince you to be heedless of it, to not do it properly. If he can't convince you to stay away from haram, he can convince you to become unaware, so that you might do it without thinking, or you might put yourself in a pathway which could lead to something bad at a future point. So, my brothers and sisters, always understand Nothing in this world comes for free. And if it comes for free, your attention is the currency. Your attention is something very, very important. Our deen is one of aql. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls us أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ أَفَلَا تَتَفَكَّرُونَ. He calls you to think. Think first, then believe. He never asks you to believe first, then to think. But how can we think unless our minds are attentive and focused and not in a state of ghafla? So I kindly ask you to please remember and support Cambridge Islamic College during this blessed month and beyond. You can use the link provided in the video description for your generous donations. Your support will help students of Islamic knowledge at the college who aspire to become teachers, preachers, and representatives of Islam in their respective communities, both inside and outside the UK. Jazakallahu khair for listening and in advance for your donation. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم